All right, there's those guys. Let's get our Facebook groups in here. Let's not click the Colts or the Jazz or whatever the heck's in there. Got spinning wheels going. There we go. 1, 2, and 3. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. It is Tuesday night, the 26th of September, and it's time for an episode of Building the Broncos. I am Nick Kendell, and joined by, as always, Carl Dumler. Carl, what the heck is this building the Broncos going on? I mean, who's building this team? What's going on? How you doing?
Well, you can't put that word building because building implies that there's something going up. And obviously this team is going in about as bad a direction as you could hope for. 70 points. Do you know how many people messaged me after this game and were just like, I feel for you. They actually had real pain for me, and they were Chiefs fans. Yeah. Because they just understand if their team had just had that happen to them, how they'd be feeling in this moment. And, you know, I've watched the full game now, but I was one of those, I had to turn it off at halftime because I was like, this is just, it's out of hand. It's ridiculous. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. And I ended up watching a movie with my kids. That was 1,000 times more entertaining than watching that Broncos game as a Bronco fan.
Yeah, it was a bad game, and hopefully today, after today's show, we can turn the page and start looking forward. But so far, pretty rough for the Broncos in this one, being the probably the national laughingstock this week. Luckily for the Broncos, they were in that early time slot, so not everybody had to witness that. Kind of like with the Bears. And talking to the Bears, we got the Bears this week, man. Talk about the sickos game of the year, maybe. We'll see how the Broncos can turn it around. But early on, man, avert that one. I saw people tweeting the NFL, can you flex this game to 3 a.m.? Can they play it on the moon? I mean, just everybody, there's nobody on the field loses, only the fans. I mean, it sucks to be back in the spot as the Broncos again, but a lot of season to go and a lot to watch and a lot of positives still to talk about here with these teams, and hopefully excited to see it. And talking about positives, Troy Bauer coming in $50. God bless you, Troy. He says, hey guys, saw that trading players equals these cap hits to cap savings. And he's got a list here. Russell Wilson, 14 million cap hit to 8 million savings. Sutton, 3.8 hit to 14.4 savings. Simmons, 3.7 to 14.4. Bulls, 4 to 13.8. Gregory, 2.1 to 14. And Jones is 3 to 10. Judy, 2.1 to 2.7. Total equals 3.27 dead to 77.3 saving. And any advisable. I mean, I don't see Wilson being traded during the season here. It probably would have to be a post June 1st designation or something in that way. I don't know if you can actually trade a player and designate it as post June 1st, but have it in the works prior to that June 1st one. But the player names here that stick out as far as trades, I could see Randy Gregory on the move here. I could see potentially Cortland Sutton or Justin Simmons on the move. Maybe Jerry Jeudy too. I mean, there's some valuable assets still on this team despite how bad they've been. But I think we're still probably 2 weeks away from really broaching this topic. I mean, we're going to talk about it for sure. But like from the realm of reality, Broncos could easily be 2-3 here in 10 days. You know, would that be a good thing for the team long term? I don't know. But they have 2 pretty winnable games coming up in theory.
Right. I mean, like I said, if there's a team playing worse than the Broncos right now, it's the Bears. And so good chance you can get a win this weekend, possibly. I mean, I'm not going to – it's hard to pick between 2 really bad teams of which one's going to mess up first or which one's going to mess up more. But, yeah, I mean, there's going to be some names to keep an eye on. Broncos are probably going to be in pretty big rebuild mode if they figure out pretty early on that they're not going to be a playoff team this year, because a lot of these players, they're not Sean Payton's players. And every single one of those players you just listed, they're not Sean Payton's guys. And so, you know, here in like Randy Gregory only played 50% of the snaps this last weekend. And so for a guy that's a starter, it's probably a sign that something's going on there with him and just the coaching staff of not getting along very well. So he's probably the one of that list that I would say most likely gone from the Denver Broncos.
You know, you'd be talking about, like a 7th round pick or something. It's more of a salary cap dump. And he could probably still be, a solid contributor to a team where he doesn't have to be a leader in a prominent role. But yeah, he's one that I think probably on the move. We could see about DJ Jones and a lot of these guys. We're 2 weeks away from this being a serious conversation. And shout out to Scott working the back saying some data here with straight cuts and no salary. Jones, Jewell, Patrick, Sutton, Simmons, Bowles, and Gregory could free up about $70 million in total cap savings next year. The issue is that you have to then replace those guys as well. But I mean, if you're talking about that level of a teardown with where this team is at, it's a multi-year process, and you better get on board with that if that is the case. And a lot of people are calling for that. It'll be rough to go through, but at least it would be a direction, right? I just don't know if Sean Payton would be interested in going for that at the end of the day. So
right.
We'll see. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think there's maybe a couple names if the Broncos really, it's very clear that they're out of it, that they're not going to be a great team this year. Like I said, Gregory's one. Maybe I'm trying to think who would be the next one. Honestly, maybe Simmons. Just because his value, I mean, it's down right now, but obviously teams know what he can be. And I could see the Broncos being willing to say, if we can get maybe a second round pick back for him, that they'd be willing to take that just because they don't have a second round pick right now. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying that he's probably one of them that I could see if they really get to that kind of point. I don't, like I said, I don't see a complete teardown. I mean, some of these guys, Jerry Jeudy, I mean, I don't want to get completely into our topic yet, but he was one, had a decent game for being kind of coming back from injury, had 5 catches, 81 yards. Sutton, other than the 2 fumbles, had a pretty nice game. I mean, the 2 fumbles have to factor into that. So we can't take that away because that was, man, those were devastating. If they stood any kind of chance, they had to not have those kind of plays. And Garrett Bowles, kind of been a pleasant surprise this year. I thought he's been playing very well for the offensive line. So again, there's some nice names on there that I could still see being a part of this future. But they're going to have to figure out some ways to get some draft capital, and probably you're going to have to trade a decent player at some point.
Tough situation for the Broncos, no doubt. Kevin Gray coming in saying, evening, Nick, Carl, and Scott, big mile high salute, Broncos country. Hope the show isn't all doom and gloom. Well, we're starting off with a little doom and gloom here, but dome and gloom, whatever it is. No, we appreciate you, Kevin, coming in here. Always good to hear from you. Hope you're doing well, and hope life is great. Angela Reese coming in here, and hell, saying firing Vance Joseph is not going to solve the problem. Our players are not good enough for the league. Yeah, it's so many issues here. I mean, we have issues with obviously the players, the health of the guys up front, the personnel evaluating these guys, and the scheme itself is an issue too. So Vance Joseph is probably not long for this position in Denver from what we've seen so far. Is it all his fault? No, but somebody will have to take blame for it. And even though they were pretty bad the second half of the season last year, they're worse so far this season. So it probably will not solve things. This is going to be much more of a player-oriented fix, in my opinion, but there has to be some accountability at some point if they continue to play this bad. But he's going to get a chance to turn it around this week next 2 weeks against 2 of the worst offenses in the NFL.
Yeah, right. I think definitely you have to look at some scheme things when the Broncos are getting pretty much zero pressure almost every single game. There's a problem there. Secondary, when you're seeing them 13, 14 yards off the line of scrimmage, and it's just easy pitch and catch. And for the Dolphins, they're sitting there saying, oh, we'll take this all day. Our guys, we get the ball in their hands. We're just going to let them run. And that's what they did. It was just easy plays. And like I said, then it destroys your ability to get any kind of pressure. And like I said, there's a long list of all the reasons this is happening right now. But we got David McElrath coming in with a $5 super saying, good evening, Broncos country, Nick, Carl, Dylan, and Deacon Scott. Hashtag Buckham ×3. Hashtag MHH for life. Hashtag Broncos for life. David, always good to see you in here. And Michael, of course, coming in saying, good evening, Nick and Carl. I'm building the Broncos. Go Broncos. Thank you for the stars there, Michael. And Casey Nickel coming in with a 1999 super, turning it orange, saying, if we lose to the Bears or Jets, hear me out. I love PS2 and want him to stay, but Dallas just lost Diggs and could really use an elite corner. If Denver is the first pick in the draft, what do you want to see done? So this two-parter here. Got a question about PS2 in the trade, and then obviously then if they get the first pick in the draft,
For
Would you take?
1999, we will answer 2 questions. So,
Yes, yes, very much so. Thank you very much, Casey, for
yeah.
that. And I mean, it's a legit question. PS2, I'm sure he's getting frustrated out there, coming off maybe his worst game of his NFL career, giving up, I think it was like 102 yards receiving, something like that. I mean, it was bad. And some of it was, I think he just was confused on who was supposed to be where, who was supposed to be covering who. And he just kind of happened to be the guy in the area. So he got credited with the catch. Um, I'm torn on this because obviously PS2, he's an elite player in the NFL. I mean, we're talking a top 10 defensive player of all positions.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're going to get maybe what the Jags got when they traded Jalen Ramsey, it would be hard to pass that up right now. I mean, they got 2 first-round picks and it'd have to be more than that.
It'd have
2
to be
first-round picks and a fourth.
You still have 3 years of control on him on this. Ramsey was coming with a new contract. And also Ramsey was having some issues with coaching staff and whatnot, where Surtain's been nothing but the consummate soldier. So sorry to interrupt, but it would have to be, for me, just the way the contract is set up, I'm needing more than just 2 ones for him. And that pretty much says if that's an unreasonable ask, then he's not for sale. The other thing is you don't know where that Cowboys pick is going to be. I mean, that could be pick. I know they just lost to Arizona, but that's still a Super Bowl contender. That could be pick 32. Pick 32 is plus a future one, which Lord knows what it is not worth Surtain. So I'd want some certainty. I'd want to know where that pick is at. I'm probably not trading him unless you're trading quarterback value for him. I'm talking like 3 firsts and a 2. And if that's too much, well, you asked what the price was.
Okay. All right. And I agree.
That's where I'm at least.
I agree. I think the Jalen Ramsey is just the starting point of that discussion because, like I said, you got a lot more control left on him. But I'm still at least willing to take the phone calls right now.
Oh, yeah.
And then the second part there, if Broncos have the first pick in the draft, what do you want to see done? I think this is an easy one for me. You know, if Caleb Williams is coming out, you're taking him. You know, Sean Payton even talked about it. And I've had a few people actually messaging me going, is he like living up to this conspiracy of trying to tank for the first overall pick? I don't think he's doing that by any means. But he did make a comment when he was working for Fox Sports that Caleb Williams is the type of prospect that could cause the NFL to have to change how they handle the draft because there just might be some teams out there that decide to tank for such a prospect. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, I mean, if Caleb Williams is there, you take it, you don't question it, you get your franchise quarterback, and you begin to build around him. You know, the golden ticket, if we're talking like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, that golden ticket is a franchise quarterback, top 10 guy on a rookie contract. Mm-hmm. There's so much you can do when you've got that kind of prospect in the building. And I know defense needs a overhaul, all those kind of things, but you know, Wilson hasn't been the problem this year or the main problem or anything like that, but he's not the solution either. You know, he's got maybe a couple more years of decent play left in him. Like I said, if you can go get that franchise quarterback, you do it. It just makes everything else very easy to do. And even if he doesn't come out, let's say May comes out from UNC, probably a guy I'm still willing to take first overall. Like, unless there's just not a great quarterback prospect, they all decide to stay for another year in college football. Otherwise, I mean, I'm just staying there at that first overall pick and just biting the bullet, taking the quarterback.
Yeah, teams will always go for the younger, cost-controlled guy. I mean, I know the circumstances weren't exactly the same, but Andrew Luck came out, right? And the Colts had Peyton Manning coming off the neck surgery and, you know, guy who pretty much built that team, right? That, I mean, they have statues about him forever in Indy. And they're like, oh, well, see you, Peyton. We got this guy, Andrew Luck, coming in here. Team won't give a hoot about having Russ, I believe, if they have a chance at a elite caliber blue chip quarterback prospect, right or wrong. And I don't even know what type of trade it would take. I mean, if Russell Wilson was, let's say, 26 years old right now, and playing, 26-year-old Russ level, then we can have a conversation. But you're talking about a guy who'll be 35 next year, whose play style has already diminished some in terms of the athleticism here. A guy that the head coach that's here, who's probably going to be the only man standing at when this time point comes along from those big decision makers, a guy who did not choose to bring in that quarterback that's there right now in Russell Wilson. So you probably go with Caleb Williams in that thing. I don't think you think super hard about it. Or Drake May. I mean, there's a possibility. apparently, according to Dane Brugler, who has a lot of sources, works for The Athletic, some teams had Drake May as high or higher than Caleb Williams as a prospect. Not me. Don't put those words in my mouth. But Drake May is also, considered a pretty damn good prospect. So you probably just go down that pathway. And it's a long-term thing at that point. I will say also people talking about bringing in the quarterback. Oh my God, you're going to ruin them. You're going to ruin them. I think the offensive infrastructure, even though you're going to take away some this offseason, is still okay. There are guys that are open. I think a lot of the hits are equal part offensive line to quarterback, not getting rid of the ball, getting through progressions on time. So I think that you're not going to kill the quarterback in terms of just terrible infrastructure coaching around him on offense, unless it's you're having to play keep up every game and the defense is able to pin their ears back and he's getting hits because of that. But I think the offensive infrastructure would be okay for a young quarterback to come in and you buy yourself some time over those first couple years. So we'll see. I think the Broncos probably win this week against the Bears, and we're not having this conversation anymore as much. But who knows? It's fun to talk about right now. Phil McLaughlin coming in. Always fun to talk with Phil. Says, good evening, Nick, Carl, and Deacon Scott. Does Vance Joseph get fired before the season ends? He definitely is not the entire problem on defense. Buckham, MHH for life, and go Broncos. Right now, I'd say that he is trending towards being fired before the end of the season. They have some veterans on the staff, and the more that you get embarrassed like this, the more that there's going to be tension, and they will probably make a move. Vance Joseph was not their first option at defensive coordinator, obviously. Brought him in, and so far it's looked pretty poor. Scheme is a problem as well. I think talent's a bigger issue, but it's still NFL players out there, right? And this is week 3. We're not like it's like week 18 here where it's just like backup after a guy like future contract types of dudes that are out there. You had starters out there and you're getting spanked and embarrassed out there. So Vance Joseph, definitely, I don't think he makes it to the end of the season at this rate. I'm not calling for him to be fired right this second, but I'd be shocked if he's here, week 18.
Yeah. And really, that's going to be the best offense you play all year. It's going to get easier. The speed that the Dolphins have was just a horrific matchup for the Broncos. I think, I guess I can get to one of my stock downs, Alex Singleton. You're putting him in coverage against one of the fastest running backs in football. That's going to end in disaster, 9 times out of 10. And so part of that's just realizing you don't have great matchups. Then also you have the bad tackling on top of it. There's a lot of things, like I said, that went wrong with it. So I think the defense will look a little bit better. Like I said, they're playing 2 really bad offenses coming up. They're going to get a chance to get some things right. But I still think at the end of the year, Vance Joseph, like you said, I don't see how he's going to make it. There's just a lot of things wrong right now. There's still some players that worked under him when he was here that were not very impressed with him. And I just think there's going to be a lot of voices calling for him to be kind of the one that falls on his sword for the rest of the team. There's going to be a lot of, at the end of the year, pointing of who messed up, who has to be the one that everybody calls out. And I think Vance Joseph's going to be one of those guys. We've got Gary Palmer coming in with a $9.99 super chat saying, hey, BTB guys and Broncos country, the only way is up. There we go. Now we're getting more positive. Even a blind squirrel will find its nuts now and then. Go Broncos. Yeah, I don't see another game like that this year. It was a really bad day. Like I said, everything kind of that could go wrong went wrong. The offense, the offense was moving the ball. Mm-hmm. They were doing pretty darn well between the 20s. And then all of a sudden, a couple fumbles, bad interception, a couple big penalties that got touchdowns called back. Mm-hmm. You think about that, of Russell Wilson probably should have had about 3 or 4 touchdown passes in this game that just didn't quite work out. And so all those things added up together. I just can't see that all happening in one game again.
Yeah. It was definitely a world of suck out there for the Broncos in Miami. They've only won there once in their history. It's a tough place to play, and Miami's, operating on firing all cylinders right now. I will say, though, you keep saying they're not going to play a better offense. I'm not going to say that until we're past Andy Reid and the Chiefs. So I can guarantee we won't give up. I don't even want to guarantee. The odds of the Broncos giving up 70 again are very low, but I could see the Chiefs putting the Broncos in hell as well. So we'll see how it plays out. But it's Broncos defense gotta hopefully have some pride at some point, right? Woofy coming in here, $5 super chat over on YouTube. Thank you so much. Woofy says, good evening, Broncos country. If we win the next two chances of beating the Chiefs with those wins as momentum, Denver Broncos for life, MHH for life, and fire VJ. I mean, if the Broncos, I'll tell you what, we're Broncos country way in the dumps right now. But if they beat the Bears and beat the Jets, there's going to be a percentage of the fan base that's like, okay, we got a chance now. And it's the NFL. I mean, the freaking Cardinals beat the Cowboys this week. Crazy things happen. It's not the transitive property, game by game, week by week. Things happen. So could happen. I would say that the ESPN score predictor would probably have the Chiefs 96% to 4 or something right now for that game in Arrowhead. But crazy things happen in the NFL. Is it Arrowhead first and then Denver, or is it Denver then Arrowhead? I cannot recall.
I think it's Arrowhead first, and that's the Thursday night game.
Yes.
If I remember right. Yeah, and then you got Packers, and then, Chiefs right after that. So I did want to say thank you all on YouTube here. I don't know if you saw it on Twitter, but we just reached 20,000 subscribers on YouTube, and that is all you guys. So I just want to say how much we appreciate you all tuning in, day out, even in these bad times. You guys help bring a lot of good to this kind of time. And like I said, I know we're all frustrated, and we were hoping for a lot better this year, thinking that this could maybe be a back in the playoff kind of team, finally got a coach, all those kind of things. And it's going to take a little longer than we hoped, I guess is the best way to put it right now. But some winnable games. Hopefully next week we're talking about a victory and Broncos getting back on the right track. So again, but thank you guys all for tuning in all these times, day in, day out. And we got Zach Powers coming in saying, afternoon, fellas. What a week it has already been. Cheers to our best chance of witnessing a true rebuild since Reeves. That's what it takes.
But that probably means not winning this weekend against the Bears. So I don't know. I'm not going to tell anybody what to cheer for. I'm cheering for the Broncos team to win Super Bowls. And if that means, Caleb Williams this year, then so be it. Bo Pascal comes in, says hi from Texas. Pearl Heater also saying hi. Good to see you guys. Hope you're doing well. Jack saying 0-4. Well, possible, Jack. We'll see. Tim Hoffman saying hello. Good to see you, Tim. Waving back to you. String guy. I always do that to you, string guy with a guitar in the background. Come on. Says hello, Nick and Carl on Building the Broncos. Hello to you. Got our guy Patrick in the house saying aloha insiders. One day we will be able to hold our heads high. Just wake me up and tell me it's 2015. I'll be a lot happier. But other than the Cubs winning, Roy Osborne coming in. Evening all, we are not in a world of suck. We are much worse than that all around. It's a universe of suck then. More like outer space, universe of suck. There we go. Yeah, it will get better. And I think Sean Payton will work tirelessly to get it better. And you know what? The offense is still looking a little bit competent. Giving up 70 sucks, but we have some fun highlights on the offense as well that we can watch in the very least. Brad, $20 saying, I almost hope we don't win many. Grab a high draft pick, trade everyone, and rebuild it. If we win more than a few games, the rebuild won't happen, and we'll be putting Band-Aids on it again. I just don't know if the Broncos have the ability to Band-Aid this team this offseason. They tried to do it this last year, but the number one most guaranteed dollars ever spent in an offseason. You spent big on the offensive line. You spent pretty big on Zach Allen too. And now you got these big contracts on a team that appears to be going nowhere fast. That makes it harder to give yourself flexibility in the future. You're in the red entering next season. You got a lot of ability to get out of the red, but still that's detracting talent before adding talent. So no more Band-Aids. If they're going to go for the rebuild, I hope they actually truly go for it and trust a 3-year process. It's hard to win in the NFL. That doesn't always work, of course, but they've tried everything besides that method. I think I'm ready for it. I'm ready for the true rebuild and just, down to the studs.
Yeah, it's hard to admit that you're that team, and especially as a coaching staff, you're coaching for your job, players, you're wanting to be on a winning team. Garrett Bowles put it well of just saying, I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of being on a team that loses, all that kind of stuff. You could tell he was just defeated after this game. Mm-hmm. I've never seen him so just down. So I hope he can get picked back up. Because like I said, he's actually been one of the few decent bright spots for this team this year. But he's right. He's been here for 7 years now. Hasn't been on a true playoff team at this point. Yeah. And I know sometimes this idea of, sucking to get a high draft pick doesn't always work out very well for a lot of teams. But sometimes, like I said, you got to almost tear it completely down to rebuild to get to something good. And 7 years of trying to like I said, put those Band-Aids on it. Hasn't worked well at all. So maybe try a little something different. We got Jesse coming in with a $5 super saying, we keep talking rebuild, but with what? No cap and few picks. Time to fire sale everyone, including Russ, and get Russ cap hit over rebuild in 2025. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the problem. Broncos really sold big that this team could be something now. You know, when you go trade all this for Russell Wilson, then you trade for Sean Payton. You're right. The draft picks, not there as much as you would like. There's still some things you can do. Like I said, if you get a top 5 pick this year, you've got some firepower of what you could do. If you're going to miss on the quarterbacks, it means you can probably trade back, get some decent trade draft capital to be able to add a lot of players to this team. You're still going to have to hit on the picks. I mean, that's going to be the main thing. I do like the fact that some of the players from this past draft already are hitting. Marvin Mims looking like he could become something for this team moving forward. You know, so like I said, maybe we're not as far off, but you got to get the quarterback right. You got to get the right coaching staff in place. And once you start doing some of those things, things will start falling in place.
You'd hope so. Thank you so much, Jesse, for the super chat, the $5. We really do appreciate that. Naj coming in too, 1999, said, I don't want to hear anything about Vance Joseph. We knew about Vance Joseph. To me, this is all Sean Payton. He was paid a king's ransom, handpicked every coach, every free agent, and talked trash about Hackett, beat the Chiefs, and all is forgiven. Yeah, it's rough for the Broncos right now, and Payton should probably get a good bit of blame for where the team is at, but it's also pretty early in his tenure as a head coach as well, and they paid him. Talking about that king's ransom means that probably going to keep him around for another 2-3 years, even if it is getting off the tracks here. So he's going to get a chance to get it right. Fortunately for him, he has had a lot of success in the NFL. So you know, we can point at that as the much broader sample size than what we have right now and say that, you know, he knows what it takes to field a competent team and a perennial playoff contender. But this team is far from that right now. And just curious to see what he can do over these next few games. It's frustrating because the offense, I mean, it looks worlds better than last year. Russell looks so much better. I know they spent big money on the offensive line. Maybe that's part of it. The scheming looks better, but it all still comes crashing down. In the end of the day, they're still losing football games. So, yeah, it's probably a team that's still a bit out, and we'll see how the rebuild goes, if at all, with Sean Payton. Who knows? I did see Benjamin. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask a question. If you are Sean Payton, what is your conversation with Vance Joseph this week?
Get those boys to tackle and set the edge better, because the only way we lose this game is if the Bears run it all over us. And the Dolphins ran it at will, especially targeting Nick Bonito, Randy Gregory, and Asang Bassi. And that's how you lose this game. So take away the run this week, make Justin Fields beat you with his arm. And if not, we might be leaving you in Chicago.
There we go. We got Benjamin Flores coming in saying, Benjamin here.
I want to say Ben's showing up here. Typically, it's been saying Facebook user for Ben, but we actually see it, Ben. So Lord knows what's going on. But good to see your face.
He says, I just can't believe this team has gotten worse since last year. It boggles my mind. I don't care that the offense is better. The team overall, public opinion, and morale have dropped off. How is that even possible? Sad times, man.
Yeah, it's who knows? And I see Scott saying that his name shows up there. How's it possible? Well, it is a 3-game sample size, and this team has a chance to get better as the year goes along. I mean, the Broncos started off last year 2-1, and it was a hollow 2-1, obviously, but they just devolved and got worse and worse and worse and worse. This is a team that hopefully with coaching and a competent coaching staff can get these guys playing better, and we see improvement as the year goes along. Now, I'm not a believer in momentum from one year to the next, given how much time is in between the seasons and how much teams change over years, but still that would be a good indicator of things getting better here. But right now it is bad, and I'm almost guaranteeing that it will not feel as bad a week from now after you get a chance to play the Chicago Bears. But we'll see. They're probably saying the exact same thing about the Broncos, unfortunately. So
yeah.
I do want to start to get into our topic here. And Carl, I know you gave this one to Chad. I thought of it too before you responded to him, but we're doing stock report today. I don't know how you can have many stock ups at all. And I'm going to challenge you. Can you give me a single stock up person on this defense?
On the defense,
On the
no,
defense after 70 points?
no.
Okay.
There's no. I mean, I can't think of a single player that I'm looking at going, yeah, they weren't the problem. Like every single player had some kind of play happen. Missed tackles, almost every single player seemed to have at least one missed tackle in this one. Defensive line getting blown out of spots, leaving wide open holes for the running game, almost zero pressure. Secondary, like I said, just looked completely lost out there. So I tried hard to find one player that I'm like, okay, that was okay. I couldn't do it.
I mean, okay, this is maybe a little bit cheating or facetious is the wrong word, but how about stock up on Justin Simmons for not being out there and then seeing what that turns into when he's not on the field in the
Yeah.
back end with the, competency and the run fits and everything. Also, just unbelievable stock up for me for Quan Williams. I mean, Sang Bassi was just systematically targeted in space in this game, in the pass game and the run game. And I know that he does have some good plays on the ball, but my God, Mike McDaniel said that number 21 on the Broncos, he ain't it. And he went at him a good bit in space. So stock up for the two
Yeah.
guys that were out. And also maybe stock up for Jewel. He didn't have a good game, but man, it really went off the rails after Jewel got dinged up. So not a good
Yeah.
game from Jewel, but just because like how bad it got after he left. Those guys kind of the spine of the defense, maybe a little bit stock up for them just because they weren't involved. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, well, big time stock up is Justin Massey coming in with some stars, saying, doubt we get Williams. I'd rather draft defensive studs, start trading some guys out for picks, need an edge and cornerback, probably safety, assuming Simmons is gone. Obviously, O-line too. Yeah, I mean, I get it. You need all those things. Don't get me wrong. But quarterback still is king in the NFL. I mean, it's why these guys are getting just ridiculous contracts right now, $50 million. And if you can find yourself a top 10 quarterback, there's just so many other things you can do to help build in those other areas.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with deciding we're going to really build up this entire defense and decide we're just going to, put all of our stock into that. We've seen what having a great defense can do. I mean, we've had it for a lot of years. The Broncos, even since the Super Bowl, I mean, I know the Super Bowl, they had a great defense, but 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, the Broncos still had a top 10 defense. Still didn't win a lot of games. You still got to have something there. And like I said, if you got the quarterback, it just makes everything else building wise really nice. And like I said, if you got him on a rookie contract, especially, then you can go start buying some players on the defense to add to the talent. You don't have to hit on all these draft picks. I remember Seattle when they had Russell Wilson under his rookie contract. Like they could go throw first round picks, trade them for whoever, and that player wouldn't work out, and they'd still have a talented team because they could go spin big other places. I think it was Michael Bennett. Who was the other pass rusher that they had at that time, their edge rusher?
Bruce Irvin?
No, he was a draft pick. There was another one that they had. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, they could go spend some big money on some of those other positions. 49ers right now, they're being able to throw silly money at some of these other positions because Brock Purdy on a 7th round pick contract. It makes things a lot easier. And so, like I said, if you can get the quarterback figured out, it just makes everything else flow so much easier. You don't have to be perfect everywhere else to make a team work.
Yeah. And I do want to get to this. Phil first says there, we finally drafted an offensive tackle. Wasn't Bowles the last one? Bowles was the last one. And if the Broncos are outside the range of drafting in the top 4 in this class, let's say top 3, offensive tackle is definitely in the conversation. Not you let it off of the show saying Garrett Bowles has been a slight surprise this year, but with the way the contract is set up and everything, I could see them having to move on from him and then reset the position with a Olu Fashanu or a Joe Alt there in the top 6, 7 in the draft and get a young player there as a building block at a premium position. So that's definitely a possibility this year, or this is a pretty good depth tackle class too. The issue is that the Broncos don't pick again until the Saints 3rd rounder with where they sit. That Riley Moss trading up and giving up your own 3rd round pick for him. It might be nice to have that 3rd rounder right now, considering it could be pretty high, but We'll see. And I want to get this Douglas Wall. Name 5 team rebuilds that were successful in the last 10 years. How long did it take them to be relevant? I mean, I can name a few off the top of my head that have looked pretty successful here. I mean, it's not even just rebuilds, it's teams that have sucked and then hit the lightning bolt. But I guess if you suck, you're in a rebuild, right? That's just kind of how
Yeah.
it is. The Bengals, obviously, won off the top of my head. I would say that the Jags were absolutely terrible for a while, and they won a playoff game last year. God, well, how amazing would it be to win a playoff game in Denver? Just 1 year removed from picking first overall, right? Or 2 years removed,
Yeah.
and 1 year removed from Urban Meyer. The Lions are definitely in the right direction right now. They definitely were in a rebuild for a number of years. The Dolphins were dreadful for a while, and they got Mike McDaniel and giddy up. They tanked for Tua, right? Tank for Tua. That was a rebuild. Oh, I mean, look at them now. They're looking pretty good. The Bills,
Hmm.
Josh Allen, they were horrific for a number of years. Now they're one of the top Vegas Super Bowl betting teams week after week, and that's just, I mean, pretty much naming the AFC there. So, I mean,
Chiefs.
it does happen in the league. It's just not a lot of times you see the true tear down fire sales to the point where it's like as uh, obvious as the Lions were. But it does happen. Those teams were definitely rebuilding and then hit the quarterback and off to the races they go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kansas City Chiefs, they had the number 1 overall
Oh,
pick.
yeah. Chiefs are a good pick, too. Yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
call. Yeah.
You know, they had to rebuild everything, and it was nice for them. They built up their roster, and then they got Patrick Mahomes. So they already had a lot of talent to have him work with. But before that, before Andy Reid got there, they were one of the worst teams, laughing stock of the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't take too long. I mean, it took them a few years to, like I said, get Tyreek Hill, rebuild that offensive line, get some decent defensive players, Chris Jones, you know, those kind of guys. But yeah, Eagles is another one Phil's listed in here. You know, you can look at a lot of teams. There's not a lot of teams that just stay good and just never have to reach that point of being a bottom tier team, get a top 5 pick kind of thing. It just usually you got to get those kind of prospects and players coming into your roster. And I just can't think of another team that hasn't had to have some kind of rebuild.
Yeah.
That's great, at least right now. Maybe Cowboys.
I mean, they had the number 5 pick right when they took Dak that year. It was kind of a rebuild because they took Zeke and whatnot in that one. So,
that's right.
So Packers are probably one. Any team that's had like a super franchise quarterback for a number of years, probably not that team. But just, Broncos obviously are not there right now, and they're going to have to figure it out and get it together. So do want to get in Steelers and Ravens are 2 that come to mind. They've just been perennially excellent. But I do want to get to you. So I gave you my stock ups, which was players that were listed on the defense that didn't play because my God. But I want to hear a stock up from you as well.
All right, stock up. I mean, I got to go with my boy Marvin Mims. Okay. He's an easy one. I mean, you got the kickoff for a touchdown, great play by him. I mean, you're seeing why the team wants him to be a special teams contributor. I understand why they are limiting him on offense because you have him for those special teams. You don't want to overuse him, but still, I mean, he's getting less than 15 snaps a game right now on offense. And in those 15 snaps, he's really maximizing them. I mean, they're having him run deep a lot, and it's making teams have to respect it. I just wish that they would find a way to get him on the field a little bit more, find different ways to get him a little more involved, because he's just been such a playmaker for this offense. I mean, we just haven't had this consistently, what we're seeing from him. And it's how Russell Wilson wants to play. Like, he wants to go deep. And so having a guy like him, and especially now that Jerry Jeudy's getting healthy, you're going to have maybe a few more one-on-one opportunities for him out there. I'm hoping as the season goes on, he gets up there, because I think Scott said he's number 3 among rookie wide receivers right now for yards. And like I said, he's only playing 15 snaps or less a game on offense. So he's just putting up ridiculous numbers at this point for the limited opportunity.
Yeah, he's been definitely a stock up, and I didn't take that one from you because how could I? But he's been probably the biggest bright spot that can give hope to this team through the last 2 weeks. Things have been burning down around him, but hey, Broncos got a wide receiver, a deep threat who looks like he really does belong. And for me, I already gave a stock up, but you kind of hit it on as well. But I wanted to maybe cheat on this a bit and say, stock up Mims and just the special teams in general.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been harping on it. In the first week, they had a big hand in losing that game, but the Broncos had a lot of competency coaching wise in that position, a lot of experience, and I think the special teams has turned it around a lot better the last 2 weeks. And Mims, as a returner, is a big reason for that. I mean, a kick return for a touchdown, you'd see that maybe twice a year, if that. In the NFL, it just doesn't happen. So,
Yeah.
and it was a wild, kind of weird game, but so yeah, Mims. That's not an official stock up from me, but did want to emphasize as well the special teams turnaround and how good he's been there. My question for you: how are you getting him more reps right now? I mean, obviously what they're doing is working. Maybe
Yeah.
more isn't leading to more efficiency, but I mean, with how good he's been and issues you have, you got to probably figure out a way to get him out there more. I mean, how are you doing that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm wanting to see a little bit more of some shorter throws get coming his way. I mean, I know he can win the deep ball, but I'd love to see just what the Dolphins just did. They did a lot of deep in routes, quick slant plays. You get that ball into a player's hands with that kind of speed and playmaking ability, and just let them go make a play. Again, that's not hard stuff. That's pretty simple football 101, and just say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have you run this 10-yard route, break it in. That's not a deep end, but it's an intermediate in. And we're going to get it to you. You're going to be right here, Russell Wilson. This is going to be a timing play. And like I said, just let him go make some plays, because he's been one of the few people that can do that. You got Jerry Jeudy back now, and I know that's a lot of what he brings to the table as well. And so, I'm wanting those guys to almost be next to each other. Have one run the deep, one run the in route, and make teams have to really respect where they're going to have to cover in that way. So that's one way that I would love to see him get a little bit more involved. Like I said, just getting a few more snaps. I know they've gotten him at least 1 or 2 carries a game where they're running sweep plays, just trying to take advantage of his athleticism. I'd kind of love to see maybe a fake handoff and have him run a wheel route and just see how teams respect that for him. I don't know. There's plenty of ways that you can get him involved just because of how great of an athlete he is.
Yeah, so I honestly wouldn't change too much with what they're doing right now, because it's obviously working pretty well. Just a little bit more volume. Work some more packages in there to get him in there. But if we're talking, week 7, week 8, and the Broncos are sitting there at 1-7 or something, and they've traded Sutton, then we can really start to talk about developing those areas that we haven't seen. But for now, I think the offense wouldn't mess with it too much for what Mims is doing, other than maybe another package a game, give him a little bit more out there, and maybe you can do some tendency breakers as well. I mean, right now, like you mentioned, he's been pretty much a deep guy. Well, they're probably going to play some pretty strong off coverage with him. Maybe you can get the ball to his hands quickly in space for a play that's just a tendency breaker out there. Stock down for me on this one. We're stock up with that one, rookie. Going to be stock down with the next one. People have been calling for it. They asked for it as my favorite pick of the last draft cycle, but Drew Sanders, stock down on that one. I know people have been listening like, oh, Vance Joseph, got to get Drew Sanders out there. Well, Drew Sanders did not look ready. I don't know if this is about as tough of an assignment as you could possibly get for that rookie, considering the run scheme and design that we saw from Mike McDaniel. But the tackling looked poor. The run fits were poor. The processing looked slow. He looked like a guy who's still learning the linebacker position. So you can still have packages in for him this year, obviously. You should use that talent, especially as a pass rusher. But the calls for him, being exceptionally better and ready than Josie Jewell or Alex Singleton, even though they didn't have the best games. They looked like they belonged on the field compared to Sanders. So stock down for me on Sanders. Just calling for a little bit of patience for him as well, because this is just his second year playing that stack linebacker spot. He was playing edge rusher there for Alabama before, and then before playing at Arkansas, and just has a ways to go in terms of the instincts and the experience at the linebacker spot.
Yeah. Well, I'll stick with the wide receiver position, and I got to go stock down on Sutton. Again, those 2 fumbles, just not that I thought the Broncos were going to come back by any means, but right there before the half, Broncos have a chance where you got to set it perfect. Go down, score a touchdown, get the ball right after half. Maybe you go back down there and score a touchdown, and you're back in this. I know that's like perfect scenario, everything
It
working
happens,
great.
though. I mean, you
It
got to
does.
try. Yeah.
And the offense was, like I said, they were moving the ball in this one well. And then, Sutton makes that catch, fumbles it. And then all of a sudden you go from a 28-10 game where the Broncos are driving to 35-10, and it just destroyed any other chance. And like I said, then later on, fumble again where the Broncos are driving. I think he caught it and was down in the red zone, tried to make an extra move. And it just, that was probably one of the worst games I've seen from him, just because, like I said, he's usually pretty good about ball control, ball security, all those kind of things. And to see him making some very big mental mistakes of having that ball sticking out there pretty far, just was disappointing to see that. Like I said, otherwise, he had 90 yards receiving, touchdown catch, had another touchdown catch that was called back, a couple of those things. He did have one touchdown that he dropped.
Mm-hmm.
And that was
a good play, design, good throw. He should have had that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I definitely put that one out there. And we got Justin coming in saying stock down is P-Rine. Not sure it is his fault. Yeah. I mean, Broncos abandoned the run game pretty early in this one, just because you get down that far. That's unfortunately the issue that you run into. And P-Rine, he's shown this year he's a number 2. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's ever going to be a true number 1 running back for any team out there. No. And he's had some plays where very questionable. I mean, I can't remember which game it was, but he had that 3rd and 1 where he tried to cut it outside instead of just picking up the first down. Those kind of things really take away from his game. But I mean, this game, he showed he understands. Just get north-south. Just get running downhill. Go pick up as many yards as you can. He's just not going to be much more than that.
Protect the damn ball. I feel pretty bad for Sutton because it was obvious that he was pressing and trying to make things happen when the defense was falling apart, and they felt the stress of that other team, the Lamborghini that was the Miami Dolphins offense. So tried to do too much, put the ball in harm's way, and just made things worse. So he could have had an unbelievable game if he just would have held on to the ball out there. Yeah. So still a talented guy. You can see that on tape. Hopefully other teams see that too. And we'll see what comes of it here. But I felt bad for, just watching him, hang his head after that. It's just like, again, God bless it. You can't do that, but like at some point you feel sorry for the guy. I shouldn't feel sorry for him, the millionaire playing football, God bless him. But it's just like, that's a tough situation, and it's his fault. So yeah, stock down for him, stock up for me. 3rd game in a row where I think Russell Wilson is playing better and better. He's maybe his best game as a Bronco so far, in my opinion, in this one, moving the ball pretty well. Still, has some issues getting off the scripted plays, sometimes issues with the placement of the quick game. But overall, I thought, he's been playing like a top 10, top 12 quarterback in the league right now. It's just things around him, specifically on the defense, are falling apart. And it's almost too bad because I want to see what it would look like in a competitive game where the defense is playing at least average. But we're not there right now. But Russ is playing well. I don't know what the cap ramifications would be of potentially trading him or what it means for the long-term future with him. You're kind of saddled with that potentially. But stock up. He is not the fault right now. Biggest issue is that entering age 35 season next year, what is the Broncos' competitive window in line with his years that are left of being a good quarterback? I don't know if they line up, which is a tough spot to be.
Yeah. And we got Phil coming in saying, why not use McLaughlin and Smith on returns and let Mims play more offense? Well, it's one of those, you're taking a downgrade in what can happen in a return game. And especially, here's what I'll say, punt return, I would not take Mims off the field. Those other 2 guys, I don't trust their hands. I've talked about it where I was at training camp watching both of them try to catch footballs. It was kind of scary. Kickoffs, I can understand it a little bit. But again, we still saw with Mims. Do you really want to take that kind of play away from him where he could actually change a game if the game was close with the 99-yard return? So I get we want to see him more on offense, and I do too. And I think they can figure out a way to get a few more snaps out of him. I think they're just kind of easing him along at this point. And especially in this last game, like, the game got out of hand early. You don't want to get that kind of playmaker hurt. So I understand being a little bit of conservative. But we got Colby coming in saying, here's the tell. We kicked the field goal instead of going for it when they're scoring at will. All coaches want to tank. Well, I mean, so one of the field goals happened after Russell Wilson he only got sacked once.
Mhm.
I'll talk about that here in just a second with my next stock up. So it was like 4th and 20 or 4th and 15 or something like that. I mean, most teams are just not going to go for that at that point. The other one, it was still, the game was still in hand. It was 21-7. Field goal makes it 21-10. Like, you're still in it. So you don't want to take points away at that point. I actually get why they kicked both field goals in this one. I understand you're needing to score touchdowns, and both those drives had touchdowns that were called back. So it really kind of stinks when you think about it, of those should have been touchdown drives, and they were kind of just weird penalties. The first one, Brandon Johnson not set for a full second.
Yeah.
It's not that the play was stopped by the Dolphins by any means. Jerry Jeudy had a touchdown. The other one was the offensive pass interference, where I think Mims ran into a guy and Cortland Sutton got open in the corner of the end zone. And those kind of plays are run every week by every team. Like, you run those pick plays, and you just kind of hope that the refs don't call that, and they're not going to call it every single time. I think he got just a little too aggressive. I mean, like, when he really went into the hit to the defender, I think if he played it off just a little bit less, a little bit more of, oh no, we ran into each other, kind of thing, I think that wouldn't get called. So that's just a lesson that a rookie has to learn, of just understand the nuance of what you're trying to do. So again, like I said, I don't disagree with the 2 field goals, but again, teams like this, yes, you have to go score touchdowns.
Yeah, you got to go out there and be aggressive and go make some plays. Stock up here for me. Did we get that one from Colby already? I saw you had a super chat come in, but appreciate you, Colby. Yeah, 2 picky calls. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough on that one. Stock down again for me here. Did anyone ask about Payton White didn't challenge a Sutton catch? I did not catch that. I know that he did a conference call instead of a true on press conference Monday, which to me I thought was a little bit, maybe you should have faced the media a little bit more after that. But that's I didn't hear anything about that. He said, yeah, we thought we had a pretty good look at it. So there you have it. Thanks, Scott, in the background on that one. Stock down again for me on this Broncos team. We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but I think we got to emphasize just how poor Randy Gregory was on this one. Just looked out of place. I mean, to the point of the Broncos, only 34 out of 73 snaps as well. Getting blocked by running backs, one-on-ones with tight ends. It just did not look like it wasn't very good out there, and didn't look like a lot of effort. Now, I understand you're getting your butt kicked out there, and that's pretty hard to keep up the intensity with all that as well. But it's piling on now, a few games where, you are the highest paid guy on that defensive line, I believe, base salary wise, at least. You're the number 1 edge rusher. Don't look like that at all. So pretty poor signing right now. Stock down on Gregory. He's one that I wouldn't be shocked at all if the Broncos are looking to take what they can for him just to move on from some salary cap. And maybe he'll be a better, complementary kind of piece on a more well-rounded defense.
Yeah. And another stock down for me, you already kind of hit on him a little bit earlier. Saying Bassey had 5 missed tackles in this one. For your slot corner, when teams are coming after you with the run game, you got to go make those kind of plays. And there's a couple drives where he could have actually stopped something. If he makes his tackle, maybe the Broncos force a couple more punts in this one, and it's not a 70-20 loss. And I mean, like I said, everybody had this. Singleton had 4 missed tackles. There's a lot of players that had about 3 missed tackles, but Bassey was the worst. 5 missed tackles in this one. And then he wasn't great in coverage. I think he allowed 4 catches on 4 passes for 38 yards, which doesn't sound like a whole lot. But again, you could tell the Dolphins came into this game with an idea of, we can target this guy. We can get him in those single coverage moments, and he's not going to win that matchup with the speed that's coming at him from the Dolphins. He's just not a speed guy. He can't, if he doesn't guess right of where things are going, he's going to lose that very quickly. So, but stock up for me, I'm going to go the offensive line. Pass blocking wise, I thought this was easily their best game They gave up only that one sack, and it was kind of it wasn't actually a guy got beat. It was there in the goal line situation. And for some reason, McGlinchey decided to crash inward to help on a double team, and he left a guy wide open to come right after Russell Wilson. I'm not 100% sure why he did that, because he had a pretty good game up until that point. But again, the offensive line, I thought they gave a lot of time for Russell Wilson to scan the field. Run game was up and down, but they did have some nice holes. The run game was hurt by some really bad negative plays, where it was more, I didn't think the blocking was bad. The running backs picked a bad lane. There's one where Javonte Williams kicked it outside, and I think it turned into a loss of about 5 or 6 yards. And there was a cutback lane that was wide open. If he had just seen it, I think that would have turned into about an 8 or 9 yard run at the least. And so I put that more on the running back than I ever do the offensive line. If there's a nice hole for them to run through and they miss it, you can't put that negative play on the offensive line, in my opinion.
Yeah, they were okay. I mean, McGlinchey's still struggling. I think he's one of the bottom 3 tackles in football in combined pass rush and run block win rate through 3 weeks. Now, he's had some pretty tough assignments, to be completely fair to him. But you are also paying him big time money. You'd expect him to stonewall or, be a little bit more competitive than he has been the first 2 weeks. So McGlinchey, maybe you can not include him. I mean, I thought Cushenberry had a pretty poor game too, but I mean, we're really grasping at straws here for stocks up. And that's what I'm going to do here. Stock up to the Broncos draft fans, man. If you guys want to talk draft, building the Broncos, obviously, Scott and I also big time in the draft community. Eric, Lance, we're going to have a lot of time to talk about the Broncos and potential draft picks here. So should be a fun season for that. I know it's too early to really get in the specifics there, but stock up to those Broncos fans who are also crazy draft fans, like a lot of us covering this Broncos team are.
And talking about draft stuff, we've got somebody saying that no USC quarterback has ever led a team to a Super Bowl. Uh-oh.
I mean,
can't take him now.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
just kidding. No, I mean, again, we could say that about Texas Tech before
Big
Mahomes got there. Yeah,
Big 12 quarterback who had won a playoff game.
Yeah,
before Mahomes.
So you don't look at where they came from. You look at what they bring to the table. And when we're talking about tools wise, it is hard to find anybody that brings more tools than Caleb Williams coming out of college. I mean, big arm, decent runner, makes the crazy plays that you're seeing from like a Mahomes type. There's just so many good things. I mean, there's some bad. Don't get me wrong. No prospect out there is completely perfect. But he's definitely one of those prospects that you look at and you just say, we can't question this. You got that first overall pick and he's coming out. You go get that guy.
Yeah. Well, a lot of time to talk about it. Unfortunately, probably sooner than we thought. Michael Ronquillo coming in saying, great show tonight, Nick and Carl, on building the Broncos. Go Broncos. Go, Michael. We appreciate you so much. I think we still have one more stock down here, Carl, on this one. And we pretty much hit all the guys who are going to do it. So I just stock down on Sean Payton and this Broncos team right now. I mean, it's a pretty dark spot. We thought this would be a team that'd be competitive this year, but we kind of joked about it a little bit, saying, anything can happen after that Russell Wilson season. Need to see it to believe it. Maybe Garden ourselves, but maybe the Garden was correct. So stock down, Broncos country. I guess the one big nihilistic, dark way to view this is that if you're going to pick any time to be an absolute trash heap, let it be when the best player in the NFL is in your division, because it would have been, even if the Broncos were good, it would have been pretty hard to overcome Kansas City for what they are right now. So we're getting our bad years out when, it'd be hard anyway. But yeah, that's stock down. This is as low as hopefully it'll be, though. So hopefully at some point it's got to be like, do you want to be here? Pride, do your job.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll stick with that same mentality. I'll go Vance Joseph.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, he's just the easy one to pile on. And I know we had I think Naj said we don't need to talk about Vance Joseph, but I mean, it's pretty obvious right now. Broncos are getting out coached on that side of the ball. Some easy pass and catch moments. Run game, they're just getting destroyed off the line of scrimmage right now. And that's not all scheme, but there's still some scheme issues within that of guys not being in the right spot. And so just so many things going on there. I had a lot of people messaging me going, is he going to get fired today? This was like Monday before all the press conference and everything else was going on, or conference call. Sorry, I should say that. And I was kind of going, I don't know. I mean, you give up 70 points. It takes a lot to get fired after 3 weeks, but that's kind of one of those moments you really got to question whether that's going to be what happens. So he's, like we said earlier, he's got a chance at some really nice bounce back games, but it also, if let's say the Bears go out there and put up 30 points and you're going, this is a bad Bears offense, and they go out there and do that. Yeah, he could be losing his job very early in this season. So he's got a lot of work ahead of him.
So do we, guys, and so does everyone here watching the team this year. But again, week by week now. It's a week by week kind of situation, and we'll see how it plays out. But appreciate everyone coming in today, all the support for the super chats. I mean, you guys are killing it. Make sure you're following Carl and I on Twitter. Carl is at Carl Dumler, MHH. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also, make sure you guys are following us at Mile High Huddle and, of course, BTB Football Pod. And also, of course, at Mile_High_Huddle. Facebook.com. Make sure you're following us on there. Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, please subscribe if you're joining us on YouTube, like the show, and share it on all your social media platforms. Once again, shout out to you guys, subscribers. 20,000 subscribers to Mile High Huddle. That is pretty hard to comprehend, especially considering we built this when the Broncos have been pretty darn terrible. But I mean, this has been a safe space, I guess, for Broncos fans to come and talk and, exercise those demons that this team has certainly called upon from the fans over the last few years. So, one day they will dig themselves out of this and we will all get to enjoy the fruits of our labor and pain that we've had to go through for years. But 0-3 right now, and a pretty embarrassing loss, but uphill from here. I'm hoping. Any final thoughts, Carl?
No, I'm with you. It's hard. You're hoping once you hit the rock bottom, like I said, you just got to bounce, and hopefully we bounce hard. We'll learn a lot about this team over these next couple weeks. Just have they quit? This last game, it looked like, especially that second half, defensive guys just completely quit. Dolphins probably could have put up 90 pretty easily if they really wanted to, because of how bad that defense just, guys not running, guys quitting on tackles, quitting on plays. So I can't imagine that film room right now, but you're hoping that guys take a little bit more accountability and say, this is just we're not okay with this.
Yeah. It's rough, but hopefully it'll get better, guys. So we'll see what happens next week. Make sure you guys keep tuning to Mile High Huddle. But until then, make sure you continue also to choose kindness and compassion. And as always, go Broncos.